Well, when NOAA was created, of course, we had really no idea about what a grave crisis this would appear to be and how the earth sciences would leap from among the last chosen by graduate students to now a booming concern in graduate schools. And given all of the parts that you've just told us you are responsible for, let me see, that included everything on the planet, in the air, and all the way up to the surface of the sun, right?
Yeah.
Do you begin, only 6 months in, to have the feeling that that this maybe needs to be restructured in some way, that this is now an outdated bureaucracy, that it has a far greater and graver responsibility than the people who created this institution thought?
It's indeed a very serious responsibility. We have partner sister agencies and departments that we interact with that have other responsibilities. And I think that it's much more productive to figure out how within NOAA we can be more effective and how we can be more effective with our partners, be they stakeholders, other agencies, private sector, whatever.
Well, let's get right to a question that everybody's going to be asking, having to do with Copenhagen, having to do with the new president and the new team that has been created in this administration with Lisa Jackson, head of EPA, Carol Browner in a new position to try to coordinate between all of you, John Holdren, down from Harvard and Woods Hole, who is now his chief science advisor, and you, and of course we're all wondering, does the president get it? And how does he bring you all together?
I think the president made it clear when he was running that he thought climate was a very serious challenge, a serious priority, and he has been acting on that within this administration. If you look at the money that went to renewable energy with the stimulus funding, the ARRA funding, if you look at the president's moves to increase the fuel efficiency of cars and trucks, those are two concrete examples of where there has been significant movement that was in the immediate power of the president to do something. The president has communicated to his team that addressing the climate challenge is a very high priority. It is something that he takes very seriously, and it's something that there has been a huge amount of discussion about within the federal agencies. Clearly, to take effective action is going to require congressional decisions as well, and indeed interaction with the broader group of actors in this country, not just the federal government. And part of the strategy has been to work in a collaborative fashion to bring the discussion along. And I think it's very frustrating to everyone that it's not moving farther and faster, especially given the opportunities that are teed up in Copenhagen.
Well, Copenhagen is what we're all wondering about. There's this time pressure, less than 3 months now. How often do you all meet with the president? Give us an inside view there of how this new team with Carol Browner and John Holdren and yourself and Lisa Jackson and several other... Steve Chu, of course, with energy. Is it beginning to integrate in a new kind of way that we haven't seen before? I mean, people have been hoping for that.
One of the first interagency task force that the president set up was this energy and climate group that Carol Browner chairs. And it is a very active group. It meets frequently. They have been working through many issues.
More than once a week?
Or
continuously?
There are principals, and then there are deputies, and there are working groups within that. And there's sort of constant action that sort of goes across those different levels. It's a cabinet level discussion. The different cabinet members have been involved. And I should just mention that that's sort of one piece of the discussion. There's a separate interagency task force that has been set up on climate and adaptation, which of course is equally important. I mean, we do need to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. The focus is, of the country is very much on mitigation, but adaptation is seriously important. We need to be moving on those in parallel. And so there's a separate interagency task force on climate and adaptation that is co-chaired by Nancy Sutley, who's the chair of CEQ, John Holdren, the president's science advisor, head of OSTP, and me. And there is a very active group of departments and agencies that is working on the adaptation piece in parallel to the mitigation piece. So those are sort of two things that are in play and that are interacting because the players are talking to one another and the activities are clearly related. And then of course the international negotiations for which Todd Stern has the primary responsibility. So there's the national focus, and then there's the international dialogue. And those pieces are all connected.
Are we going to see the president going to Copenhagen as well as other heads of state?
I don't know that that's been decided.
Possibility still.
I don't know.
It is being talked about. Now, and asked about. Pew did which does many very interesting studies related to global warming science, has recently done a study in which it suggests, it finds that scientists think that the journalists have done a fairly sloppy job. They even use that word, sloppy reporting, by and large. Do you agree with that? Do you think that the profession of journalism has had a failure here?
I think many first-rate journalists have said as much, that in the guise of reporting a balanced view, that balance has turned out to be bias. And bias as balance has been an issue that I think has received a lot of attention within the journalist world. And I think that many journalists who understand the issues have moved beyond that and are doing a much more reasonable job of communicating to the American public, not just that there are two sides of this issue, it's happening, it's not happening, but where the bulk of the scientific community lies. And yes, there are some who continue to deny that climate change is happening or that it is caused by humans, but that they are in the minority. And I think that that is a much more balanced view. And I have great respect for the journalists that I know that are actually covering this issue in what is a responsible fashion. But I don't think that was where we started a number of years ago. I think there was a lot of covering climate is challenging because it's so complicated. And I think many were struggling to try to understand how the climate system works, what this is all about, and the good and appropriate need to have balance, I think, worked against the importance of understanding that it wasn't just two sides of the story.
Well, indeed, many reporters wrestling with all of this, have instinctively felt that what we're after here is fairness, that is the golden fairness and completeness and interesting, and balance is appropriate for some kinds of stories. But this is an event story, not a politics story, not a story which at its core is about politics. Political issue, of course, but not about politics. It's an event like when Mount St. Helens blew up, on which occasion we didn't give the other side equal time. Or to get a little bit more interesting here, when the tsunami happened, it took a little bit longer to find that the tsunami had happened, and again, it was an event. We wanted perspective, and now it took a little bit longer to find out the atmosphere was warming, that it's man-made, et cetera.
Right.
But now we've seen that, and Ross Gelbspan, the Pulitzer Prize-winning editor for the Washington Globe, who came out of retirement because he was so moved in his professional soul to cover this, was among the first to call the disinformation campaign, as he described it, promoted by fossil fuel, coal, and oil. He named Peabody and he named ExxonMobil. He called this a high crime against, he called it a crime against humanity. Yep. And James Hansen himself, one of the world's preeminent climate scientists, less than a year ago in front of Congress, called it a high crime against humanity, the disinformation campaign.